Hints on Practical Spirituality, Part 2. Now, coming back to the practical, the subject of the practical application of psychology has been taken up in India from very early times. About 1400 years before Christ, there flourished in India a great philosopher, Patanjali by name. He collected all the facts, evidences, and researches in psychology and took advantage of all the experiences accumulated in the past. Remember, this world is very old. It was not created only 2 or 3 thousand years ago. It is taught here in the West that society began 1800 years ago with the New Testament. Before that, there was no society. That may be true with regard to the West, but it is not true as regards the whole world. Often, while I lecture in London, a very intellectual and intelligent friend of mine would argue with me, and one day, after using all his weapons against me, he suddenly exclaimed, "But why did not your rishis come to England to teach us?" I replied, "Because there was no England to come to. Would they preach to the forests?" 50 years ago, said Ingersoll to me, "You would have been hanged in this country if you would have come to preach. You would have been burnt alive and you would have been stoned out of the villages." So there is nothing unreasonable in the supposition that civilization existed 1400 years before Christ. It is not yet settled whether civilizations have always come from the lower to the higher. The same arguments and proofs that have been brought forward to prove this proposition can also be used to demonstrate that the savage is only a degraded civilized man. The people of China, for instance, can never believe that civilization sprang from a savage state because the contrary is within their experience. But when you talk of the civilizations of America, what you mean is the perpetuity and the growth of your own race. It is very easy to believe that the Hindus, who have been declining for 700 years, were highly civilized in the past. We cannot prove that it is not so. There is not one single instance of any civilization being spontaneous. There was not a race in the world which became civilized unless another civilized race came and mingled with that race. The origin of civilization must have belonged, so to say, to one or two races who went abroad, spread their ideas, and intermingled with other races, and thus civilization spread. For practical purposes, let us talk in the language of modern science. But I must ask you to bear in mind that as there is religious superstition, so also there is a superstition in the matter of science. There are priests who take up religious work as their specialty. So also there are priests of physical law, scientists. As soon as a great scientist name like Darwin or Huxley is cited, we follow blindly. It is the fashion of the day. 99% of what we call scientific knowledge is mere theories, and many of them are no better than the old superstitions of ghosts with many heads and hands, but with this difference that the latter differentiated man a little from stocks and stones. True science asks us to be cautious. Just as we should be careful with the priests, so we should be careful with the scientists. Begin with disbelief. Analyze, test, prove everything, and then take it. Some of the most current beliefs of modern science have not been proved. Even in such a science as mathematics, the vast majority of its theories are only working hypotheses. With the advent of greater knowledge, they will be thrown away. In 1400 BC, a great sage made an attempt to arrange, analyze, and generalize upon certain psychological facts. He was followed by many others who took up parts of what he had discovered and made a special study of them. The Hindus alone of all ancient races took up the study of this branch of knowledge in right earnest. I am teaching you now about it, but how many of you will practice it? How many days, how many months will be before you give it up? You are impractical on this subject. In India, they will persevere for ages and ages. You will be astonished to hear that they have no churches, no common prayers, or anything of the kind, but they, every day, still practice the breathings and try to concentrate the mind, and that is the chief part of their devotion. These are the main points. Every Hindu must do these. It is the religion of the country. Only each day may have a special method, a special form of breathing, a special form of concentration, and what is one's special method, even one's wife need to know. The father need not know the sons, but they all have to do these. And there is nothing occult about these things. The word occult has no bearing on them. Near the Ganga, thousands and thousands of people may be seen daily sitting on its banks, breathing and concentrating with closed eyes. There may be two reasons that make certain practices impracticable for the generality of mankind. One is the teachers hold that the ordinary people are not fit for them. There may be some truth in this, but it is due more to pride. The second is the fear of persecution. A man, for instance, would not like to practice breathing publicly in this country because he would be thought so queer. It is not a fashion here. On the other hand, in India, if a man prayed, "Give us this day our daily bread," people would laugh at him. Nothing could be more foolish to a Hindu mind than to say, "Our Father which art in heaven." The Hindu, when he worships, think that God is within himself.